Tories scrapped the cap on bankers' bonuses in the autumn during a cost of living crisis. The Labour Party rightly opposed it. Yet here we are, just 3 months later, and the Labour Party support scrapping the cap on bankers' bonuses. Shameful. But is the Prime Minister comforted by the fact that he's now no longer alone in this House on being completely out of touch with public opinion?
What I will do, I will, for shame, defend Labour on this one. So, actually, the cap on bankers' bonuses, it's optically terrible. So really and truly, chat, the bankers' bonus is optically a really bad thing. But in terms of how much bankers get paid, the amount in which they get paid out in salaries is basically the same whether you have the cap or not. Whether or not you have the bankers' bonuses there, it depends on how risk-reward they end up putting those salaries out for. Especially when a lot of these bankers' bonuses and salaries get paid out in share dividends anyway, so they have a material interest in ensuring the bank doesn't collapse for them being too risky. And it's only certain sectors of the banking industry that work in these this predictive kind of finance, this kind of trading areas. I really don't care about the bankers' bonuses cap necessarily, although it is poor optics. And I know that Rachel Reeves knows that it's poor optics, because when it was actually scrapped originally, she agreed with us, right? She agreed with people who hate bankers that in the midst of a cost of living crisis, the Conservatives are scrapping the cap on bankers' bonuses, and it tells you everything you need to know about this government, which they now agree with. So basically, no Labour policy can ever be watertight, because they will just change their position on a whim. On an entire whim, they'll change their position on something like the bankers' bonuses. Because she knows that it's optically terrible to do so. But she's very happy now that she believes that she can get away with it. Very happy to try and woo the city, to try and woo the bankers. And we know this as well, because they've also said they're going to unashamedly champion the city. Now, this is an article in the FT about a plan with the financial services sector that was produced by Rachel Reeves with Tulip Sadiq and city grandees who were invited in on a lot of this policy framework. Now, some of it's terrible, some of it's fine. But you look at some of the details that are here. Cutting red tape and embracing AI. Now, cutting red tape just means no regulations, which is kind of the post-Brexit world that we expect. The Brexit bonanza of deregulation, the Liz Trusses and the Nigel Farages of this world wanted to create. And again, a lot of these bankers did want their bonuses uncapped again, which is why they supported Brexit and the deregulatory effects of that. On top of that, one thing that I noticed when reading through this article was this part right here. The Financial Services Plan, seen by the Financial Times, welcomes some recent Conservative regulatory changes in the city, including the Edinburgh reforms and the changes to the Solvency II insurance scheme. Now, for people in chat who don't know, what Solvency II was a European Union piece of legislation that mandated a certain amount of reserves in our insurance sectors to make sure that they had enough cash on hand, enough liquidity on hand, to be able to pay out in the case of there being lots of insurance claims at one time. This is the amount of kind of reserves they had to have available to be able to deal with something like that. And I believe it was around about the 60% margin. And I think Jeremy Hunt was slashing it to around about 20%, so a huge cut in the amount of on liquidity that they needed to have available. And this is Labour saying that they support that massive drop. Now, this is literally the problem of the financial crisis, is people essentially being over-leveraged. Now, I can understand why you might be sceptical about this if this was a decade ago. We've just come out of a pandemic. And we are also going into a very uncertain time with regards to things like the climate and ecological disaster, flooding everywhere. Do you really think that the time to be allowing people to be more risky with their investments in something as highly financialized as the insurance sector is a good thing to be doing? This is asking for another 2008. This really is. And I criticised Jeremy Hunt at the time. I did a whole video about his response to Solvency II on this channel. And the fact that Rachel Reeves and Tulip Sadiq are now backing this with the backing of the city grandees that they've brought into the sector, that they now say that they want to champion our financial services sector and people in the city, just shows you how far away from where we were in 2017. When we were looking at community wealth building and cooperative funds and inclusive ownership and the right to own. And now we've moved to Rachel Reeves having meetings with Goldman Sachs in Davos and JP Morgan Chase, getting people from the city, the people who literally caused the financial crisis, to advise them on what their policy is, and then looking at Jeremy Hunt being completely gung-ho with removing the protections that we have to ensure that there's nothing similar happening in the insurance sector, something the Australians know all too well. It's why they avoided the financial crisis, because the insurance company was over-leveraged in the 2000s, allowing them to change their regulatory structure for 2008, so they got through it without a problem and we didn't. It's unreal to me. It's absolutely unreal the amount that we've changed in terms of Labour Party's position. And the thing is, people don't like bankers. Stephen Flynn is right to point out that this is way out of step with public opinion. This is not a popular position that they've taken here, which makes it stands to reason why this is something that they will have understood because they've been advised to by rich people, not because they think of it as the most electorally justifiable thing for them to do. This isn't something that's come from their desire to win over voters. This has become from they want backing from rich people. And if you're a quote-unquote Labour Party, why should you be doing that? And they're not even for people who could theoretically be called job creators. Like the people who actually build at least businesses. I can at least, from other people's perspective, from a liberal perspective, I can understand why you'd like these people. But these are just bankers. These are wanker bankers. The literal people who are the absolute despised demographic post-2008. And even here is Rachel Reeves arguing that many of them didn't go far enough. British politicians have sounded embarrassed about the sectors we excel in. Yeah, because those sectors were the ones who immiserated the country in 2007, 2008. And they're the ones to unashamedly champion the UK's financial services sector, which, on top of that, is exactly why Labour fell out of favour with their red wall seats, quote unquote, because this is the same kind of rhetoric that we got from Tony Blair in the deindustrialisation period, where they became like a middle class party of people, where they were very happy to centralise our economy in London, and apparently they want it to go further as well. Literally, even Ed Miliband called parts of the city predators, and Jeremy Corbyn had a dismal relationship with the Square Mile, and he won 40% of the vote with it. So the idea of this is that they can't win the election without coming to loggerheads with the worst people in the country, i.e. bankers, just shows me how utterly ridiculous this is. Now, some of these things are fine. Some of these things are fine, like empowering the British Business Bank to invest in more growth capital. That's actually a Corbyn-era policy. It's not as good as the Corbyn-era policy because the Corbyn-era policy specifically focused on a state investment bank into cooperatives and cooperative funds on top of locally owned businesses, rather than just throwing it at whichever one is going to make the most returns for the state and growing in a fair and reasonable way. But I think that having a national investment bank is a good thing. But using artificial intelligence in the city, honestly, I'm just absolutely frustrated with the kind of position that we've got to here. It's completely nonsensical. It's completely nonsensical. And you'd think, right, well, hang on a minute, at least that might come in line with where we might get lifted caps elsewhere. But unfortunately, the two-child benefit cap, they're very happy to keep that. This is Torsten Bell of the Resolution Foundation talking about the amount in which poverty is being increased in larger families, where it's gone up to from 34% to 51% in terms of where it's going to be in 28-29. Literally, larger families are already more than twice as likely to be struggling to afford food. And this is a direct result of the two-child benefit cap that Labour don't want to scrap. But bankers' bonuses caps, that's fine. And I don't even necessarily, as I say, disagree with the position of wanting to have a competitive sector for speculative bankers to make bonuses if they want to, as long as they're getting it in share dividends. But the level of priority for them to be outwardly championing people from the city that the public despise, but not to remove the two-child benefit cap, to be seen to be the party of being pro-benefit. Honestly, I'm at my wit's end. My wit's end with this people. This is the kind of new Labour bollocks that lost these people their working class support. But they're back in the service of working people, chat. That's the line I've been told. The very hard-working bankers. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.